Welcome back to the channel, folks, and to another tutorial. This one isn't really a painting tutorial. I'm going to show you how to make concrete armour on your Sherman tank. The reason I've done this for myself is because my company HQ of 2 tanks that I needed to buy, I wanted a jumbo in there, but I only needed 2 tanks, so I didn't want to buy the box of jumbos and another box of M4A3s, so I bought a box of the 2 105 Shermans that come with all the options that allow you to make any kind of M4A3, but obviously not the jumbo. So I thought, I've got a spare jumbo turret, I'll make myself a concrete armour jumbo hull, and that should do the trick. I hope this will be of use or interest to you American players out there. It's a very simple process, as I'm sure you'll see, and if you want to see how I painted the completed kit, have a look at the end screen, guys, and you'll find a link to the comprehensive guide I posted on how to paint the Spearhead box set. And I finished the video with a look at a couple of the lists that I've been building and been using in my games. To get started, the only assembly I've completed is fixing the front plate onto the front of the hull, and then I've cut it down so it's featureless and flat, and then able to accept a nice tight fit with the sheet of plastic that will go on for the concrete armour. I'm not attaching the glasses plate at this point because I'll need to assemble that once the concrete armour is more or less ready to go onto that front plate, and the plastic card is to hand and ready to be cut to shape. And I'm going to use the hull as a template, so I just need to size up the hull to the plastic to decide where and how I want to make the cuts and where I will be trimming off any excess plastic. So this is the time we've got to be careful, watch our fingers, folks. We don't want to be taking off too much, as in the big lump of skin. And when you're cutting this, take your time to get it nice and accurate. It's easy to cut down a bit of plastic if there's too much, but if you've cut off more than you should, it's hard to recover. And you can see I used 1/2 as a template for the other side as well, save a bit of time. And then some standard kind of glue to attach them to the sides. Give it a bit of time to make sure it's properly dried, folks, because we're going to be working it quite hard in the next phases when we start cutting things off. And I should point out, by the way, I cut off the little lip off fender that was on the bottom of the Sherman hull for a tight fit. Once the glue is well set up and dried, I'm going to take a pair of clippers and just tidy up this bottom edge, folks. I've used the straight edge on the sheet of plastic, you know, the factory straight edge, for the top line of the hull, not the bottom, because that's going to be the most obvious area. And then I'm just going to cut it down. Now I should point out, folks, that you'll find this process a lot easier if you have let's say a purpose-built set of clippers for modelers. These are very, very thin clippers, much better than general purpose kind of clippers, and you'll find that also even just for removing components from sprues, you'll get a much better result. And now I'm going to be using the knife just to pare down these edges, top and bottom as required. Be careful once you're doing this again, folks. I always keep the thumb and finger controlling the blade together so that there's very little chance of the blade slipping past your finger and hitting your thumb. Then a bit of filing on the bottom edge as we want to finish this section. We don't have to do any more work on the lower areas of the hull. After this, it'll be more on the upper areas and the front. Now we're going to attach the front glasses and the lower hull, but when we're doing this we have to remove the line of bolts that are there. So once again, our thin model clippers and a file will do the job. Now for the front sheet of concrete armour, I'm going to be judging this a little bit by eye. You can see I'm using the hull as a template, marking how far down the entire or the longest point of the concrete is going to be, and then just a a fairly rough cut, but keep it as neat as possible. It'll make life easier. Sizing it up once it's in place, so we're ready to make some cuts for where the concrete passes between the fenders. Once again, judging by eye, making some marks with a pen will help us get the cuts in the right place. Measure twice, cut once, as they say. So we're going to snip out these areas, making sure we don't take too much off at this point. We want to trim it down to a good fit. So size it up and trim it. At this point you want it to be too big, so you can just keep trimming away with the clippers, the file or the knife until you're happy this is a good tight fit. And even as well, folks, you want to make sure it's even across the front, top and bottom. Then we're ready to glue it on, folks, using this thick glue, and don't worry too much about any gaps between that plastic and the side plastic for the concrete. We'll deal with that in the next stages. Now we've got a lot of very straight cut edges here, sharp edges that you wouldn't find on the real example, so we're just going to carefully pare it down, ease it over a little bit so there's a bit of a turned edge to it. We don't want to go over the top, folks. The file will help as well, just smooth out those cuts that we've made. And you know, if there's a little bit of a cut goes astray, don't worry about that, because it's just weathering, folks, you know, wear and tear. And I spent a bit of time on this front plate too. It's a tricky bit. There's a lot of detail close to the edge of the hull, so be careful. And then you can work your way down the sides and then down the front of the glasses so that these parts all come together neatly. When that's dry, we're ready to create the concrete texture. So using the thin cement here, the very thin cement, I'm applying it, leaving it just for a touch, and then an old toothbrush, I'm just stippling the surface. You'll have to do this several times over one area, as you'll find that it'll react differently according to how the glue's gone down, according to how you've actually hit it. You know, the toothbrush might have bald spots in it. So do a bit, let it dry, move on, do another bit, come back, work your way around it, and the surface will start to get nicely broken up. It might not come across too well on the camera here, hopefully it is, but it's getting really quite rough, so that it's losing the appearance of nice smooth plastic and getting closer to the final look that we're after. And don't forget to hit those top areas as well, but try and avoid getting that thin glue onto the hull. We just want it onto the very top of the concrete so we can get that nice and rough and the hull nice and smooth. Now I've marked the location of the machine gun just by eye, matching it up to another hull, and I'm going to drill through. It just has to go through far enough with a hole large enough for it to accept the ball mount machine gun from the kit. So I'm not going to worry too much, make this too finessed, folks. Just going to make sure that I am trying that machine gun ball mount regularly until I get a hole that's just big enough and no more. And that's the concrete armour finished. And looking at this, I think the front looks really good for thickness. The sides maybe could have been a bit thicker, maybe 1.5 mil on the side. You can judge for yourself, folks. I will be comparing these, comparing this rather, to a normal jumbo model at the end. But there you go, quite a straightforward, simple process, and you're going to get yourself a jumbo out of your standard M4 A3 kit. Let's start with my preferred tank formation. This is an M4 Sherman late one, so these are the veteran guys. So we're starting with the company HQ, which is a 75mm jumbo and a 75mm Sherman. And then the first tank platoon of 4 76mm Shermans, with one of them being a jumbo. The next tank formation is 3 Persians, and then a nice cheap mortar platoon, 3 points for 3 armoured mortars, so that's an artillery template and smoke, which is very useful. Then in support we've got the battle-weary armoured rifle platoon. Now these guys, with the exception of rallying, they are a 5-up motivation, so it's not great, but they are still a big tough platoon with lots of bazookas. If tanks are going to assault these guys, there's a very strong chance you'll defeat them in defensive fire. And likewise, they've got 2 light machine guns to ward off enemy infantry. Getting them to a position where the half tracks will help in that regard. So the motivation's not great, but they've got many, many plus points. And then for artillery, we've got the 3 priests. Now, it's a 3-gun battery, so it's cheaper than other batteries, such as the static 105s, and of course they are mobile, they can get themselves out of trouble. And then lastly, a full scout platoon, which I find to be quite useful, guys. It's got a mortar on it, so it can put down a template and half decent armour on those armour cars with a 37mm anti-tank gun, same as you would find, for instance, on a Stuart. So that's not bad. So basically what this brings is, I've got 2 75mm here, so they're not going to be great at anti-tank. They can take care of medium stuff, take care of dug-in targets, softer targets, but also they can fire smoke, folks. So if you come up against a gun line, these could be firing smoke onto them, which, if successful, would make it a lot more difficult to be hitting the rest of the careful elements in the formation. And of course, these guys are the main anti-tank, not main anti-tank, the main unit in here for doing the running around and all the sort of the hard graft. They've got a decent anti-tank, decent armour, they've got decent motivation, protected ammo and such like, so all round a good tank. The main anti-tank and the main sort of enduring threat to enemy armour is going to be these guys. And how I will play these, and as I've done in the past, is the company command will attach onto them, hang about them, because they've got a jumbo, and the company command can choose to, I think it's share the danger, share the risk is the rule. You can attach on to these guys and I can use mistaken target, hopefully keeping the jumbos, the Persians alive. And of course you can attach one of these with the jumbo, so there's 2 jumbos in that platoon to take incoming hits, so that could be quite effective. And as I said, smoke, very useful from these guys, plus pinning infantry and guns, and then a blob of infantry with some hard-hitting artillery and smoke and a flexible scout unit. So that is the main option for my tank list. And I shall quickly show you what it might look like if you don't want Persians but you want easy 8s. And a nice easy swap out is 4 easy 8s for the 3 Persians, which will leave you 1 point spare to spend on a card, or perhaps upgrading your company HQ to a 76mm on one of them if you're not so much interested in the smoke. So there you go, folks, my armour lists. And this is the infantry formation that I will be using. There are a few infantry options in there, but I'm going for the better quality one, which is the glider infantry. Not paras, but gliders. So you get a bit more for your points, but these guys are still very good. They are careful, confident veterans with a 3+ last stand. Sounds very much like a German. Now these platoons have got an integral light mortar and light machine gun, and I've paid a point for an extra bazooka, so there's 2 bazookas in each one. So 2 platoons like that, 7 bases of infantry, a light machine gun, a mortar, 2 bazookas, so they're big platoons. 2 platoons, company command, and a 3-tube mortar platoon. I would have liked a 6-tube one. I mean, a 6-tube mortar platoon with re-roll misses. You know, that would be very effective, but it's 10 points for that. I've had to stick with 5. And then to support it, we've got scouts again. For static anti-tank and ambushing, we have the 3-inch anti-tank gun, sorry. And those guys are anti-tank 12. They're basically like Pack 40s. This is maybe like a German list in disguise, folks. But they're basically like Pack 40s. And they are careful, confident, trained, I think. But they're careful, which means they're hard to hit. Then they've also got 3 priests. So there's 2 artillery templates, 2 smoke templates. And then for the mobile work, other than the scouts, we have the 76 platoon, which has got the 1 jumbo, and the 4 chaffies. Now these guys are fast. They got a tactical of 12, and they've also got smoke. So that could be as much as 8 smoke rounds getting fired out to suppress things if you're having to attack, or if these guys with the 76 mils are possibly outnumbered. And in terms of a split, folks, the tanks come to 40 points, so everything else can be on the table when there's a mission with reserves. So there you go, folks. It's a decent quality unit with 2 platoons of tanks, 2 templates, decent anti-tank guns, and some scouts. So there is my infantry list. Thanks for watching, folks. I hope you found that useful or interesting. And once again, thanks to all the subscribers out there who follow the channel. If you'd like to subscribe, please do so. It'll help us build the channel and bring this kind of content to more people who enjoy the game.